Welcome back to Darwin Models. So in this video we're carrying on with the Alfa Models Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio build. So as you can see, I'm getting all the pieces ready for this next section, but first of all I'd like to apologise for the delay in releasing this video to those that have been waiting for it, because I know it's been quite a while. But suffice to say, for now there's been a lot going on keeping me away. So anyway, let's get into it. Start off with painting all, and as usual with the Zero Paints metal etch primer for this, and then the 2K primer for the resin parts. So I'll just run through all of the painting process for it to start with. So now that all the painting's done, we can get on with the actual assembly of it. So as you can see there, they're still all attached to the sprues so that it was easy to paint, so we can start cutting those off now. So I'm cutting them nice and flush with the fitting pieces, just to make it easy for the clean-up part of it. So just run through all of these. And then once the bulk of it's off, I can just trim the smaller pieces off and just make it nice and neat. And for doing jobs like this, having a decent pair of cutters really is beneficial. It really is worth spending the money on them. For years, I just used to use like wire cutters and things for doing this, and then just using a knife to tidy it up. But since buying some decent ones, they've well been worth the money. And so anybody that's thinking about it, I highly recommend it, and just do it because it is worth it. And then moving on to the sander, and same applies here. Using decent sanders and getting some that have a range of grits on them is really beneficial. It gives you a lot more control over what you're doing, and just makes the job easier and gives you a neater finish at the end of it, which is what we're striving for. So it's definitely worth doing. So now that we've got all of those pieces cleaned up, we can actually start gluing them in. So as you can see there, there's a nib on the back of it and there's a slot inside, so you've got somewhere to line it up to. So I'm just checking that they all fit properly with all of the paint layers and everything on there, and checking which one goes where, as you can see. And then if the camera focuses, that's not the right way for the light, goes the other side. This is why you always check before you glue, because otherwise you can make a mess. So that's the basic front end, and you can see once it's painted it just brings the detail out, and they are great kits for the detail they put in. And then can't get that one out, which is always fun. So onto the rear, and same again, just checking how they fit, and you can see that one is a little bit on the tight side because of the build up of the paint and the clear coat and everything. So they're just going to need a little bit of adjusting. You can see there it sticks out the sides a bit as well. So I went off camera to sort those out. Just put a bit of hot water and can adjust them, and then sand the sides of them down a bit. So as you can see here, back to the front, I'm just putting the mesh grill, the photo etch piece on there, so it gives it a three-dimensional look. Not that you're necessarily going to see the detail, but as I said before, it does all add up and adds to the finished article on the completed model to give it that realistic finish and look to it. Just carefully ease that into place with the tweezers. You can see there it looks nice that in there. All the detail behind it that was moulded in is hidden, but we know that it's there as modellers, and that's ultimately what counts sometimes. So go on to the second side. You can see I'm just putting a very thin bead of super glue in there, using the Bob Smith Gold as I always use for these parts. Same again with the tweezers. You just got to be careful doing this that with them being metal tweezers, it can be very easy to scratch the paint if you slip, so you just need to be careful doing that you don't damage it. But worst case, if you did, you could just touch it out with a small brush, and with pieces that are that small, it's not really going to be seen and noticed. So because of the size of the part, I'm not going to worry about the cocktail stick on this. I can go straight in with the tub of glue and just control how much I squeeze it so we don't get it all over the place. But if you are unsure about doing this, it's best to take the cautious approach and not use the tub. You can see those two pieces in there now. Same for the headlights. Checking it's the right one this time. Slots it nicely. I did make a slight mistake on these, and I should have checked references or checked the 1-1, because they should be shinier than they are. I painted them aluminium, I think, instead of chrome, so lesson learnt on that. But by the time I glued them in and realised it wasn't quite so easy to take them out, so if I do another one in the future, I'll make sure to remember that. So I don't know why, but this is one of my favourite bits of the whole car, is this V on the front grille, in particular when it's in carbon, as I've done here. I just think it sets it off. So what I'm doing is I'm just gluing the centrepiece to start with, because it needs bending slightly to fit, so I want to get a good fixing point first, and then I can move to the side points. So as you can see, back to the cocktail stick, and just using a very small amount of glue for this, because it doesn't need a lot at all, because it's only a small attachment point, as you can see there. That now doesn't appear to want to actually glue in. So just checking that one's lining up. Again, same with the cocktail stick, same glue I'm using as well, and then that can just sit in there nicely. So I'll come back to that second side after the other side's glued properly and fully dried, and then I can focus the attention properly on it when it's needed. So same again with the rear lights as I did with the fronts, using the glue out of the tub, and then if I put it on camera, you can see I painted the black edges as well, because I realised I'd missed those before, so I just went over those with a brush. Which for a small piece like that, you can kind of get away with. I just used a sort of wider, flatter brush for that, and then you can see the same on there. And then I can go into the front, and as you'll see here, I have corrected that other bit, and it's all fitted as it should do. Just getting it to line up with that square on the inside. So the joys of doing it on video is you can skip all the boring bits like waiting for the glue to dry. So once the glue had dried on those other bits, I could move on to adding the extra bits on top, like the clear lens part. And as you can see on the side there where my finger is, that needs some adjustment as well, because it's not sitting as it should do. So the same as I did before, I sat it in some boiling water, or some very hot water, and then manipulated the shape of it to get it to fit where it should do. And then once that was done, I was able to come back and glue it into place. You will find out with resin pieces sometimes that they do need a little bit of adjusting. So you can see there, it's a much better fit now and shaping of it. So I can move on to the second side now, and the same process again, just checking it's going to fit properly where I want it, and it's actually shaped properly, which I did check those both the same time before, but it's always good to show again and check again. So it doesn't need lots of glue on these pieces, just a little bit just on that edge, and then the same on the other corner. Basically just enough to get it to grip and not fall off, because I don't want it coming off and damaging the paint or showing through the paint or anything silly like that it can do. Ultimately what we're aiming for is to not see the glue points through the clear piece. So there you go, that's the two rear lenses complete, and as you can see I did mask the reverse light section as well and try to match it up where it should be as best as I could. So moving on to the front headlights now, and same process again as the rear, just a little bit of glue just on each corner just to get it to grip. It doesn't need loads, and we don't want to put it where it's inconspicuous so it's not seen as well as far as possible. The front ones were a lot better as well as far as the shape, they didn't need any readjustment, which was good. Check the fit of the second side as well, make sure that's sat as it should do. And same again, just a little bit of glue just in the edges. Lovely. And they're quite good, these clear parts as well that Alfa Model do. Very clear and no deformities in them or anything that's visible. So I can move on to the grille pieces around the rest of the body now. So we'll start off with the ones on the top of the bonnet. Again, these were masked off, painted black in, not sure if I did in the previous video now, but the same process again as the glue. As you can see, it's just a tiny little bit in the corners, and then just carefully with the tweezers just to place it where it needs to be. When I actually put it on camera it does help, and again being careful to not scratch the paint with those tweezers anywhere. Or drop it, which is always a bad thing to do, because more often than not you end up never being able to find it again. Unfortunately I could see where it was, but you can see there it did slightly damage the paint just on that top edge, so once it was all dry, again just a fine brush, just touch that up. Side vents are next. The same process again, not anything special on any of these, just rinse and repeat basically, going around them all. Side skirts are next, and as you'll have seen in one of the early videos, these were done with the carbon fibre trim, the same as the grille and the other carbon bits. I can't remember what I did now, there's quite a few different bits that were done, and these were done at the same time. So I'm trying to get the glue as far to that back corner as I can, so that I've not got a bit that can get cut with anything, because you can see it's quite a pointy bit at that back bit, and I don't want it getting caught and broken. And then it's just a careful case of getting it lined up, because it's not actually got any proper attachment points, it's just got a groove that it sits in. It's just a case of getting it sat where it needs to be and then just holding it until that glue just bites, and then we can move on to do the same on the second side. Again, I'm trying to get glue as far into that back corner as I can, and then the front one's not quite as bad because there's more of a glue area for it, but that back is quite a point for it to actually get into. So next up is the rear spoiler, and a bit the same as the side skirts really. It's just got this groove that they sit in, or it sits in, and so just trying to get enough glue in there for it to bite, and then just go to the corners just so that it doesn't have anything that's going to have a bit sticking out that's going to then get caught on anything. There you go, looking quite smart. So it's a good way of doing it, I think, having it moulded, a groove in the body like that. It didn't have any problems with fitting of it really. It seemed to go well, so yeah, it's a good way of doing it. Roof antenna next. Took some research this to find out whether how the colours were with the carbon roof, because I got different results when I looked on Google as to how it was actually done, and the same with the rails at the side. But you want to try and match the 1-1. I think that looks quite smart as it is like that. So next up are the windows, and you can see that, like all the Alfa model kits, they come as flat pieces like this on a backing piece, and then they've got a, I don't know what you'd call it, a sort of raised bit around the edge that represents the seal. So it just gives it a sort of three-dimensional feel to it a little bit. So yeah, just get it peeled off, and then these need to be glued on. So I'm just checking the fit to start with, making sure, as with the previous things with like the lights and such, that there's no paint that's going to build up that's going to get in the way or cause problems, and it does fit nicely where I want it to. So once we're happy with that part of it, we can then start gluing it. So I use the same process as I did for the lights. It's just a sort of tiny bit just on the corners, just to get it to stay where I want it. It doesn't need loads. Just going around that back corner piece with it, and then same on that, just on that front lip. When you test fit it, you can sort of see the areas where, one way you've got a good surface area to glue to stick it, and to like the centrepiece, and then secondly where you've got bits that are going to need a bit of glue just to tease it into where it needs to be, like that front section where the mirror goes. So as you can see, it doesn't need loads. I know that the windows, particularly the windscreen, are bits that a lot of people don't particularly like on these kits, so hopefully I can show you how I do it and what works for me. So you can see I'm just starting at the back, getting that in position, and then working my way along just to ease it into where it needs to be and get it to sit nicely. On the reason for doing it that way, I found when test fitting it, was the back on the bodywork just has a very slight recess part of it, so it needs pushing into that, which I wouldn't be able to do if I did it from the front first. I'm just showing you here, just trying to be very careful with the scalpel blade, that the outside of it does have a secondary protective layer. that needs peeling off. So I'm not peeling it off, I'm just sort of demonstrating the point that when I'm handling it and I'm working with it, I can be a little bit, it doesn't matter about my fingerprints and such, because it has got that protective layer on it, which once it's all finished we'll peel them all off together. So moving on to the second side now, same again, just pushing it into that back corner, a little bit on that front strip there, and then we'll put some down the centre. So we'll push it into that back corner again first. And you can see again, with that black trim edge on the clear part, I'm trying to line the glue up so that it doesn't seep out of that, because that will hide the glue points, but anything outside of that is going to be visible through the clear piece. So just trying to keep that in mind as well while I was doing it. Just hold it for a few seconds just to get it to stay where I want it. And just doing the same again, just on that edge, just to check that, well, one, to my peace of mind so that I know that it's there, and two, just to start peeling it off, just so that it's got something when I come to do it, and the mirrors and everything on, it just makes life a little bit easier to actually get hold of it. It's just a fiddly job trying to do that. So move on to the rear screen now, and just test fit it, check how I want it to go, see how the curve of the winter fits, because you can see that it's a lot flatter along the roof line than it is down where the boot is, so it's going to need twisting slightly. So it's just sort of checking that, seeing how it lies and where I want the glue to actually go on it. So just put a bead up that one side to start with, and then we'll follow it up with the second bead on the other side. Just a couple of little dots just in the centre of each. They're probably not really needed, it's just going to hold it level where I actually want it to be when I glue it down, and just means it's not going to lift in those points. One thing it is worth noting, both on this and the front screen, is lining up the roof line. That's where your eyes are going to get drawn to, so that's what you want to actually get straight, and then aim for the gaps either side of the windscreens to be even as far as possible. But the roof line is, if that's wonky, that'll draw your eye and it will be really noticeable. So I'm just sort of making sure it's pressed down in those corners where it's a bit more challenging. So onto the windscreen now, which is probably where most people probably will struggle, because it's the most complex shape. But it's just sort of, to me, it's a case of lining it up, working out where you want the glue, working out anything that's going to be tricky or difficult, and then knowing where to put the glue for it. The process is very similar to the rear screen, so a couple of lines down either side, and then a little bit in the centre of each. Or centre, top and bottom, more accurately I should say. But you can see there I'm just putting a bit on the sides as well, at the bottom, because as I said before, thinking about where you're going to potentially have problems with the glue and where it's not going to sit properly, just making sure that it's got glue that's going to be strong in those areas. So just making sure it's pushed down properly in those bottom corners. I don't want them getting pulled up for any reason. So as you can see there, the roof line is nice and flush, so I'm happy with that. It's sitting nice and looking good. So next thing for me on this is doing the decals. So I'll start off with the emblem on the front grille, and it's a little bit of a bugbear with this kit with me, is that they've done one that's coloured and one that's black and silver, and ordinarily if you had the 1-1 you would either replace them all for black and silver ones, or you'd keep the colour ones. You wouldn't have a mismatch. So this one's fighting me, but you've got to pick where you want the colour one, whether you want that at the front or whether you want it at the back. And like I said, it's a bit of a bugbear with me with this, because it would be one or the other on the real car. You wouldn't mix and match it like that. But as you can see, I've opted for the black and silver on the front, and that means that the colour one will go on the boot. So just making sure that it's nice and straight and lined up properly and sat where I want it. And then we'll do the same for the rear, which, as I said a second ago, is the one that's in colour. But with that complaint outside, they are good emblems. They're 3-dimensional, they've got some shape to them and sort of metallic effect to it, so they do look really, really good. I don't know how well it actually picks up on camera on this screen, but as far as decals and things go, they are spot on and very crisp and detailed. So just making sure it's lined up and centered properly. So that's going to be it for this video. Last bits that I actually need to do are the front wipers, which I did off camera. So other than that, it's pretty much complete, and obviously gluing the door handles on. So there you go, that's the end of this video. So thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and I shall see you next time.